Yo, what's going on, good people? Welcome back to the channel. I hope everyone is doing well out there. Now let's talk FUJI X-M5 settings because I've been using this camera for the past few weeks now, and I finally feel good about the settings that I put into this camera in order to go out and shoot confidently. So what I'd like to do with this video is go over my personal FUJI X-M5 settings for photo and video that have really helped set me up for success with shooting with this camera. So with that said, let's go ahead and get into it, y'all. Alright, so before we get into the software settings of the X-M5, let's talk about some preliminary hardware settings. Now, SmallRig was kind enough to send out both their leather half case and their hand grip with the metal bottom plate. And what I'll say about these two things is that they will have two main benefits to adding them to the X-M5. For starters, on the X-M5, its quarter 20 mount here, it's too close to the battery door. So if you add any type of item to this mount, it's gonna be hard to open up this door. Versus something like the X-T50 where the quarter 20 mount has been added to the center of the camera with plenty of clearance from the battery door. So there is no danger of obstructing that when you mount something to it. Now, secondly, on the X-M5, I have this nice little thumb grip here that's been added to the hot shoe mount. But the problem with that is while it does increase the ergonomics, and it actually does help a lot, it takes up that hot shoe mount. So if I want to add anything like an external mic, if I want to add a flash, I'm gonna have to take this thumb grip out and therefore lose my ergonomics. And so having something like the leather half case or a hand grip is really gonna help with that. Now, just to give you a lay of the land here, if you were to get the hand grip with the metal bottom plate, these are the accessories that would come with it. You get a cold shoe cover, you get a cold shoe windscreen for the mics on the top of the X-M5, and of course you get a red shutter button. With the leather half case, you would only get this really nice wrist strap here, which I think is nice, but I think for the X-M5, it might be a little too big and bulky for me. I may add this to my A7C too. Now, seeing how it looks on the X-M5, our leather half case here feels really nice. It has a really good grip to it. It does add to the ergonomics even without the thumb grip, and it does make the X-M5 a little bit easier to hold, and it kind of looks like you didn't really add anything. If you were to just glance at it, it looks pretty stealth, pretty nice. And you can see it's easy to get to your battery, and your quarter 20s right there. Now, looking at the rubber hand grip with the metal bottom plate, this also looks really nice. I do think this adds a little bit more grip to the grip area here. This protrudes out a little bit more than the leather half case, and the rubber has a nicer texture to it where it's more grippy. And so I think this is a lot easier to hold. Notice I do not have the thumb grip in the hot shoe. And so this feels really comfortable for me to hold. And just curious on if it adds more size to the X-M5. Let's look at this next to the X-T50. It still looks quite a bit smaller than the X-T50. And so I do think this is good about giving more grip, but not adding too much more size. And I think this will probably be the grip that's mainly on the X-M5 for me. I think I will use the leather half case, but I feel like that'll be more when I want to just be a little fancy. Now, I'm not really gonna get into the shutter button or the hot shoe cover here, but this windscreen, this is what I was waiting on actually. In fact, I was hoping that SmallRig sells this thing separately, but so far at the time of this recording, they do not. Hopefully they will in the future, but let's see how it looks on our camera. There we go, it's on. Should be good for covering up a lot of wind noise when walking outside. And the best thing about this is that not only can you have this on the hot shoe and have it just cover up the wind noise, you can actually still take the thumb grip and insert it in, and now you have both. This might actually be my everyday setup. So those are the two hand grip accessories from SmallRig on the X-M5. I will leave my affiliate links down in the description if you want to check them out, but you know what? Let's get into those settings. So starting with our camera on manual and C, we're gonna go through photography settings. Starting with the IQ menu, we are gonna go to image size, we didn't change that. Image quality, we're gonna do fine plus raw. Raw recording, we're gonna say lossless compressed, save a little bit of space, but retain some image quality there. I chose JPEG instead of HEIF. We go down to film simulation. We're not gonna change that just yet. We're not gonna change anything like grain effect, color chrome effect, none of that just yet. We'll get into that for custom settings. Not changing any of that. Now for auto update custom setting, we're gonna go ahead and change that to disable. And what that's gonna do is that's gonna set us up for success when we get ready to do our custom recipes, because when you program a custom recipe and then go shoot with it, if you change any type of setting like white balance, ISO, shutter speed, it's gonna automatically update if you don't disable this setting. But moving on, custom mode setting. The way I've set this up is I have my C1 and my C2 allotted for film recipes, and then I have my C3 and C4 allotted for video custom settings. Didn't change any of that. Okay, let's go down to autofocus. For focus mode, I have it at autofocus continuous. Autofocus mode, I have it set to zone. Zone custom setting, I have it set to the standard 5x3. Autofocus mode all, didn't change that. Autofocus continuous custom setting. So what a lot of people haven't said yet, or what I haven't heard yet, is that Fuji actually has 5 programmed in autofocus settings for autofocus continuous. Most people use the custom, which is number 6. Right now, I haven't changed this custom just yet. It is sitting at 2 for tracking sensitivity and 0 for speed tracking sensitivity, which I think is fine for photography. We'll change it when we get into video. But just going back, didn't really change any of this. None of this I changed out of the box. Now for face eye detection setting, by default I have it off, but I did program my AEL AFL button to switch it on and off when I need it. But the rest of this, I have switched autofocus plus manual focus on, manual focus assist off, interlock manual focus assist and focus ring is on. The rest of this stuff I really didn't change. Touchscreen mode is off for now, but I do have the option on the screen to turn it on if I want to. The rest of these settings I did not change for the photo icon. For shutter type, I switched it to mechanical plus electronic. That way when you get to ISOs above 4000, it'll automatically switch to electronic shutter. I didn't change any of these, none of these. ISO, it's at 1250 now, but that's just because that's just what I set it at for shooting. It just kind of auto updates, so that's fine. Moving into the flash settings, I didn't change anything there. The movie settings, I didn't change anything there in the manual mode. We'll cover that once we get into the movie settings. For the tool icon here, screen setup, I did increase the LCD brightness by +2 in order to help with bright sunny days. And then if we go down to F-Log View Assist, I went ahead and turned that on. That will also be reflected in the movie settings as well. That way it kind of color grades your F-Log footage in order for you not to have such a flat image when you're looking at it in camera. Framing guidelines, I did the grid of 9 because I like the rule of thirds. Focus scale units, I've changed to feet for when I use manual focus lenses. It'll give me measurements in feet instead of meters. And then the rest of this I pretty much left as is. Now going back to button dial setting, if you want to use a manual focus lens that doesn't have electrical contacts, you want to change shoot without lens to on. That way you can shoot with manual focus lenses that are a little bit more vintage. That's about it for button dial setting. For power management, the only thing I really changed was the performance. I changed that to boost. That's how I always like to shoot with the XT50, and I'm gonna do that with the X-M5. This does decrease your battery life, but that's just how I like to use it. And then if you go down to auto power off temperature, set that to high. That way, if your camera starts to get warm, it doesn't immediately shut off. And let's reset that, I guess. And then I think that is it for the manual settings. Now for photography, moving on from the manual settings, let's talk about some film recipes. Now the film recipes I'm using are ones that I got off of FUJI X Weekly. And I will say, if you're gonna get them from FUJI X Weekly, get the recipes for the X-Trans 5 sensor. Those are the recipes FUJI X Weekly has highlighted for the XS20, and the XS20 has a very similar makeup to the X-M5. But unfortunately, the X-M5 only really gives me 4 custom slots. It doesn't give me as many custom slots as the X-T50, which gives me 7, but I think I might have a cheat code. For my C1 setting on the PASM dial, I'm actually using a film recipe developed by FUJI X Weekly for the XT50, and it is specifically for the film simulation dial. And the overall premise of it is that no matter what you turn your film simulation dial to, the recipe should produce really good results. And I've already kind of tried it out a little bit. I've taken photos here and there, and I think overall the photos coming out of the XM5 with that recipe are looking pretty nice. So I think it's here to stay for me. And so ultimately what this recipe boils down to is having one recipe, but you actually have 14 because of the different film simulations that you have on your dial and also the additional ones in your menu settings. And so it's a bit of a cheat code. Now I think on Fuji X Weekly it's called the film simulation recipe, but I just named it the film dial recipe in order to make it simpler. And I will go ahead and leave those settings up for you. Now for C2, I've programmed a recipe called Fuji Color Super HG V2, but I just named it Super HG just for abbreviation. And what this recipe is for is basically my night shots, something where I want something more moody, a little bit cooler. I think this recipe works really well for that. And here are the settings for that recipe. But just to show you how you would go about actually setting up a recipe, what you want to do is you want to start with film simulation. Right now I have standard, and so you can go in, you can change whatever one you want to have here. I'm not really going to change anything, I'm just showing you, but you change your film simulation first. Next thing you're going to go to is grain effect, and so you can go in, go weak, strong, and you go over if you want the things to be small or large grain. Now for color chrome effect, you can either turn that to off, weak, or strong. For color chrome effects blue, once again, you can go strong or weak. White balance, you have a few choices here between white priority, auto, ambience priority, so on and so forth. And then once you select one, you can go in and actually determine the color shift you want it to have. Dynamic range, you can either go 100, 200, or 400, or some recipes might call for you to just go in and change D-range priority, which if you turned it on, say if you go strong, it turns off the DR 100, 200, 400, turns that off. Next thing would be the tone curve, where you can affect your highlights and shadows. Color, where you can either go up or down. Sharpness, ISO noise reduction, and then you want to go down to clarity as the last setting. Now, one thing to note, if you change clarity, anything different than 0, whenever you take an image, it will take longer to save in your Fuji camera. And so if you want to be able to shoot fast, set clarity to 0, and you should be able to take snaps really quickly without them taking too long to save and missing shots. And then once you've made your adjustments, you can just go into edit, save custom setting, and program your recipe. Now next, let's get into video. All right, so starting with our PASM dial set to the movie mode, we're gonna go to our movie settings, starting with this first. And as we go down, we want our shooting mode to be manual. We want our movie mode to be at 4K 16:9. I'm actually gonna change this to 24 frames per second. High-speed recording is off for now. Self-timer off. Media recording setting, I have mine to the SD card because that's what I have. If you have an external recorder, you can switch it to HDMI. F-Log HLG recording, so I have set mine to F-Log 2. I think that's gonna offer the best dynamic range, and so that's what I'm rocking with for now. The rest of these I haven't changed. Movie optimized control. Now I find this is going to be super important for the movie mode, so I keep this on, and basically what this is going to do is if I go and I tap this little button right here on the screen where it says set, tap that, it's going to allow me to cycle through a lot of different settings in order to change them on the fly. So I can change mic settings, I can change picture settings, frame rate settings, all that good stuff. And so I think that's going to be super valuable. Recording frame indicators on, that's just a red box that goes around the screen when you hit the record button. You can also do tally lights. I have my rear tally lights set up to go on, but not my front ones. The rest of these settings I have not changed. Some of these are trickling over from the manual settings we initially went through. IQ, I haven't really changed any of this other than my white balance, so I put mine to the Kelvin setting, and I'm shooting basically daylight, so 5600K. Sharpness 0, noise reduction 0. None of this has changed. Focus mode, autofocus continuous. AF mode, area for me. Autofocus custom setting. Now this is gonna be a little bit different for video than what I had it for photo. For me, tracking sensitivity at +3, +5, it's been working so far. I may tweak it some more if I see some stuff I don't like, but for now, this is what I'm keeping mine at for the autofocus custom settings. Face eye auto detection is off, but once again, I have mapped this button to quickly toggle it on and off. Subject detection off, AF plus MF is off on video. The rest of these I haven't really changed. Mic level settings, I have set my internal mic to +6. That way this camera can pick up my voice as good as possible. The external mic I have changed to +3 because there are settings directly on my external mics, and that's what I usually use to adjust the sound settings. Microphone direction, so my internal microphone direction is set to front priority because that's how I'm primarily going to be using this camera, where I'm talking in front of the camera. Mic level limiter is on. The rest of this stuff I haven't really changed. Time code I haven't touched. And then the tool settings have not changed either. Those have already been defined in the manual setting on the PASM dial. And so now just setting some custom settings for video. I like to shoot at 4K 24 frames per second and then 4K 60 frames per second. So that's what I'm gonna be assigning to my C3 and C4 custom settings on the PASM dial. Once you get all your settings in place, once again, you just go down to Edit, Save, Custom Setting. And as you can see, I already assigned those two here. So I have my 2 video here, and then my 2 photos are up here. It's funny how when you switch between the manual and movie modes that the names change on your custom settings. Now for the vlog mode, I actually have slightly different settings. So with the vlog mode set on the PASM dial, the movie settings will be a little bit different than what you did when you were in the movie mode on the PASM dial. Just going down here, we're gonna see that our shooting mode is still manual. Movie mode, I'm shooting at 6.2K at 24 frames per second, just so I can have the widest picture possible in order to have the most flexibility if I'm editing and trying to get things situated. Now we also have options for high-speed recording and 9:16 short movie mode. We don't have to worry about this now because there will be on-screen menus in order for you to toggle those on and off. Now getting into the F-Log HLG recording setting, I actually switched this to only film in film simulation modes. And I think for me, using the vlog mode is gonna be more for some quick clips. So I'm not really gonna wanna do a lot of color grading. I think just being able to quickly shoot something, put it on the timeline, edit it, export it, and then send it wherever I'm gonna send it. I think that's what I'm gonna be using the vlog mode for. None of the rest of these settings have changed. Pretty much similar to what we had in the regular movie mode. And so yeah, that's the vlog mode. Also, just to note, we do have this menu here, so anytime I want to change something, I can actually go in here and make some changes. Things like turning on the face eye autofocus, I can do that. Turning off background defocus mode, on and off, all that good stuff, we can do that. High-speed recording on and off. Choosing my mic level, I can do that as well. And yeah, really just go wild with adjusting these settings on the fly. Now, another thing I want to get into is remapping all of your hardware buttons. And so if you wanted to do something like that, like I mentioned, I set this AEL AFL button to turn on face eye auto detection. All you would have to do is hold down your display back button, and then you'll see a menu pop up where you can go in, takes you through all the buttons here. They have some touchscreen stuff, but that's where I have remapped that button. So if you want to remap it, all you have to do is get to the button you want, you hit OK, and it'll give you some options to choose from. Now, as far as your Q menu goes, I actually haven't touched this as much as I thought I did for photography, but if you want to go in and change any of these settings in here, what you want to do is press and hold your Q button for a few seconds, and then you'll be greeted with a menu like this where you can go over each one of these. When you find one you want to change, you just hit your menu OK button, and then you have a list of things you want to replace it with. And then once you're done, you just hit the back button to get out of there. But yeah, y'all, that is how I have set up my FUJI X-M5. I feel really good about these settings, and I really think I'm going to be able to go out there and get the best image possible for my shooting style. I hope it was helpful for y'all. I hope y'all learned something. Do you have any comments, questions? Is there anything you would do differently? Y'all let me know down in the comments. But if you like this video, go ahead and drop this video a like. If you haven't subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Go ahead and hit that notification bell to stay informed on any future content I have coming up, and I will catch y'all later.